don't stay in the sun too
Be
long.
careful.
Okay.
You know. You taught me well.
Bye. It was lovely seeing you
Bye,
again.
Jenny. Bye.
Bye, Mama. Come on, Jenny, let's leave those young things to their knitting.
Oh, now, Babs, you don't really think they're knitting.
Maybe. After all, we haven't left the old gals much else to do. We better hurry if we're gonna meet the boys on time.
Oh, that's my Barbara.
Is that what our daughters think of us?
Oh, not us individually. You must remember that. It's just that collective modern idea of mothers. And, well, you never know. And we do have a great deal of time on our hands. Well, what do you say? Shall we go in?
Oh, yes, let's. It'll be so nice to sit down for a while.
Ah, benvenuto. Posseatore?
Yes, we would like to have a table with a view and some refreshments, please.
Oh, Americano, no? Oh, of course, of course. Un momento.
Hello.
Oh, hello there.
So nice to see you.
Who are those two treasures from a dustbin?
Sure, Effie. That's Alita Slade and Grace Ainsley. You remember from back home.
Oh, my dear, I don't remember them from Eve. That silly scarf the blonde is carrying, it's so outre. She has knitting. Who knits in Rome?
Oh, who's fiddled in Rome? Oh, never mind that. You remember them? You met them at several social occasions back home. Remember the Hendersons and that dreadful party at the Featherstone?
My dear, who could forget the Hendersons affair? You know, that's where Dahlia got lost, and when we found... Well, never mind. With all the parties that are going on, you expect me to keep track of who comes and goes?
Of course I do. Now tell me you haven't seen them before.
Possibly. Weren't their husbands in some sort of business? They certainly look well cared for enough, although they should be turned out to pasture. I wonder what they're doing here in Rome.
Well, I saw Alita this morning in the hotel, and she told me they're here with their daughters. Traveling around with them, the grand tour.
Oh, I don't know. Sounds very old-fashioned.
Well, Alita said that they were having lunch with their daughters, and then a spot of sightseeing. Oh, look at them now.
Yes, look at them. See how they admire each other like they were young things. Oh, how they look out over the city with benevolent approval over the Palatine, the Forum, and the Colosseum. You think they own the place. Hear the crowds roar at their appearance.
Oh, stop it, Evie. You know jealousy does not become you.
Jealous.
Well, I don't know why we shouldn't just stay here. It still is the most beautiful view in all the world.
Oh, it always will be to me. And I am a bit tired, so I'd love to sit.
Grace Ainsley was always so old-fashioned. Well, it's the view that we've both loved for a good many years. When we first met here, we were even younger than our own daughters. Well, you remember.
Oh, yes, I remember. There's that head waiter again.
Oh.
He's wondering what to do with us.
Well, I'll cure him of his wondering. A waiter! A waiter! A waiter! My friend and I, we would like to continue enjoying the view if it doesn't disturb the service.
Oh, of course not, senora. Now, just remember, I want you to enjoy this magnificent view that we have here in Rome. It's probably one of the finest. And just as a reminder, tonight our dinner service starts at 6. So if you stay with us, you will have a magnificent meal. And tonight we have a beautiful full moon.
Oh, full moon. Well, Grace, why not? We might do worse. And I suppose there's no knowing when the girls will be back. Do we even know back from where? I don't.
Oh, you know those young Italian aviators? The ones we met at the embassy? They have invited them to Tarquinia for tea or something. And, you know, I suppose they're going to wait and fly back by moonlight.
Oh, moonlight, moonlight. What a part it still plays. Grace, do you think that our girls are as sentimental as we were?
Oh, you know, I have come to the conclusion that I don't know what they are now, but maybe we were not knowing that much about each other when we were their age.
Well, perhaps you're right. Perhaps we didn't.
You know, Alita, I never should have supposed that you were sentimental.
Well, perhaps I wasn't always. Grace Ainsley is still quite charming and distinguished. But as a girl, she was exquisite, far more beautiful than her daughter Barbara. Although I must say Barbara is more effective. She has more edge, as they say. I just wonder where she got it.
Now I remember them. They were those spotty little brats behind us at boarding school. About 2 grades back, if I remember.
No, that's right. I wonder if they really knew each other then. You know, she still calls herself Mrs. Delphine Slade.
Really? How long has it been since her husband's passing?
Oh, about 7 or 8 years.
That's surprising. I remember I once met the Horace Ainsleys. It was summer out on the island somewhere. And I remember thinking they were this good-looking, totally exemplary model set of citizens. So very boring.
They were neighbors, you know, Alida and Grace. Very little of the Ainsleys coming and going escaped Alida Slade. In fact, she got so bored by the time her husband Delphin made his big hit on Wall Street that it's, I can't say it. Oh, well, it is said, it is reported at least, that she said, I'd rather live across the street from a brothel for a change. At least I might see it raided.
Oh, that's juicy.
Oh, it gets better. Alida was so amused by this that she let it slip at a ladies' luncheon. It was big, and it went the rounds.
Did it cross the street and reach Grace?
And then a few years later, and not many months apart, they lost their husbands. Yeah. I heard they exchanged appropriate condolences.
And did they resume their friendship?
I'm told there was a brief renewal, but I don't think they've seen each other since then. And now, here they are, together in Rome, at the same hotel, and each escorting a significant daughter.
Well, I suppose the similarity of their experience has finally drawn them together again.
Yes, I guess so. I'm sure Alida felt the drop in status at her husband's passing, certainly more than Grace. It was a steep decline to just being Slade's widow.
Oh, I can imagine being the wife of an important lawyer on the international scene, entertaining eminent colleagues from abroad, entertaining that must have been handsomely reciprocated.
Oh, it was. And you can imagine just the pleasure of hearing in her wake, You mean to tell me that that handsome woman in those stunning clothes is Mrs. Slade, the Slade's wife? Really? I thought that the wives of celebrities were usually just frumps. And now, nothing. Being Slade's widow is dullish business.
You know, it must have been tiring to keep up with daughters like us.
Well, I suppose it was, but now I think it would be a little dull not to. Now I have so little left but to mother my Jenny. And dear, dear Jenny, she is such a dear daughter. Now, if I had Barbara Ainsley, life with that brilliant girl would be quite different and not so quiet. Grace, sometimes I almost wish that Jenny would fall in love with the wrong man. Then she'd have to be watched, outmaneuvered, rescued. Now, well, nowadays it seems that it's Jenny who's watching over me, keeping me out of drafts, making sure I take my medicine.
Well, don't be so glum. It must be nice to have a daughter who's so attentive. Alita Slade is smart, but she's not as smart as she thinks she is. Oh, she used to be so dashing, much more so than her pretty daughter Jenny. Jenny just doesn't have it. She just doesn't have the vividness of her mother. No wonder Alita is disappointed in her. Poor Alita.
What time do you have, Dorothy?
Oh, it's nearly 5. What are you thinking of, Evie?
Well, something more interesting than watching those two. For old friends, they certainly seem nearly strangers.
Well, maybe they never had occasion to sit together like close friends. Awkward, maybe. Understandable after so many years. And yes, I agree, they do look slightly embarrassed at their renewed intimacy.
Whatever you
Maybe they might be new to both of them.
Whatever you say, but I'm bored. Well, let's wander around a bit before we dress for dinner. But not another fountain. I've had too much to drink.
It's 5 o'clock already.
Oh, there's bridge at the embassy at 5.
Grace, I was just thinking how Rome, how it stands for such different things to each generation of travelers. To our grandmothers, Rome and fever. To our mothers, sentimental dangers. Oh, how we were guarded. But to our daughters, no more danger than just a casual stroll down the middle of Main Street. I just don't think they even know what they're missing. But, I used to always think that, well, our mothers, they had a much more difficult job than our grandmothers. When Roman fever stalked the streets. Then it must have been rather easy to gather in the girls during the danger hour. But when you and I were young, with such beauty calling and the spice of disobedience thrown in, and no more worse risk than just catching a cold during the cool hours after sunset. Well, I think that our mothers, they must have had a much more difficult time keeping us in, didn't they?
1, 2, 3, slip 2. Yes, they must have.
Well, how could you knit in the face of all of this? It's all very well to say that our daughters have done away with moonlight and sentiment. But if Barbara Ainsley isn't out to catch that young aviator, the one that's a Marquesa, then I don't know anything. And my poor Jenny, well, she doesn't even have a chance against her. I know that, too. And Grace, I just wonder if that's the reason why you always like the two girls to go everywhere together. My poor Jenny is a foil.
Really? What are you thinking?
Well, nothing. Well, yes. Well, I was only thinking that, well, your Barbara, she carries everything before her. And that young Campoleri boy, well, he is one of the best matches in Rome. And don't you look so innocent, my dear. You know that he is. And, well, I was also thinking, Grace, wondering how it is that two such staid characters as you and Horace ever even managed to produce someone quite so dynamic.
I think you overrate Barbara, my dear.
Oh, no, I don't. I appreciate her. And perhaps I envy you somewhat. Oh, my Jenny, she's a wonderful daughter. She's perfect in her ways. And I suppose if I were going to be a chronic invalid, I would much rather be in Jenny's hands. But I've always wanted a brilliant daughter, and I can never quite understand how it was that I got an angel instead.
Well, Barbara is an angel, too.
Of course she is. But I just know that your Barbara is going to come back engaged to that Campoleri boy. She's got rainbow wings. And I just know that Grace is going to sell her home in New York City, and she's going to move to Rome so that she could be nearby them. She's going to have the most perfect old age, surrounded by her grandchildren. Shame on you, Alida. So, here we sit, Grace, and doesn't it bring back the past all a little bit too acutely? Oh, look. The sun is setting. Aren't you afraid, my dear?
Afraid of what?
Well, of Roman fever, pneumonia. I remember how ill you were that winter. As a girl, you had a very delicate throat, didn't you?
No, we're fine up here. Down in the Forum, it does get deathly cold and suddenly, but no, we're fine here.
Of course, you would know. You always had to be so careful. I must make one more attempt not to hate her. Grace, whenever I'm up at the Forum looking down, I always remember that story of a great aunt of yours. She was a very wicked great aunt, if I remember.
Oh, Aunt Harriet. Yes. You know, the story was that she sent her little sister out to the Forum after sunset to get a night-blooming flower for her album.
Yes, but she really sent her out there because they were both in love. Both of them in love with the same man. Wasn't that it?
Oh, well, that was the story, but they say Aunt Harriet confessed it years later. And that poor little sister, she went out, she got the fever, and she died. Oh, how Mother used to frighten us with that story when we were children.
And you frightened me with it. That winter that you and I were here as girls. The winter that I was engaged to Delphin.
Oh, did I? Did I really, Alida? I don't believe you're that easily frightened.
Well, I wasn't often, but I was then. I was frightened because I was so happy. I wonder if you even know what that means.
Oh, yes, I do.
Well, I suppose that was the reason why the story about your great aunt made such an impression on me. Of course, I knew there was no such thing as Roman fever anymore, but the Forum, it could be deathly cold after sunset, and everyone knows that the Colosseum is even worse.
Coliseum.
Yes, the Colosseum. Well, it wasn't easy to get in once the gates were locked. Far from easy, still, and in those days it could be managed. Lovers met there who couldn't meet elsewhere. And of course, you knew that.
No, I don't remember.
You don't remember? Oh, please. You don't remember going out to visit some ruins or other one evening after dark and catching a chill? You were supposed to be going out to watch the moon rise. Everyone said that that was the evening that caused your illness.
Perhaps it did. You know, it was so long ago.
Well, yes, and you got better soon, so it really didn't matter. But I suppose that it struck your friends as rather strange because everyone knew how prudent you were on account of your throat. And yet, you went out that evening, sightseeing, after dark, didn't you?
Well, perhaps I did. You know, the most prudent girls aren't always prudent. Okay, so what made you think of it now?
Because I simply can't bear it anymore.
Can't bear what, Alida?
You not knowing that I've always known why you went out that evening.
Why I went?
Yes, why you went. You think I'm bluffing, don't you? Well, I know that you went out to meet the man that I was engaged to, and I could repeat every single word of the letter that took you out there to meet him.
No, please don't.
Why not? Listen if you don't believe me. My darling, things can't go on the way they are. I must see you immediately, alone. Come to the Colosseum tomorrow after dark. There will be somebody to let you in. Well, perhaps you've forgotten what the letter said.
No, I haven't. I know it by heart, too.
And the signature. The signature. Only yours, Delphin Slade. Well, that was it, wasn't it? That was the letter that took you out after dark.
Well, how do you know? Because I burned it at once.
Of course you would burn it. You're so prudent. And if you burned the letter, you're wondering, how on earth I know what was in it, aren't you? Well, my dear, I know what was in that letter because I wrote it.
You wrote it?
Yes, I wrote it.
Oh, I see.
I horrify you, don't I?
I don't know. I was just thinking it was the only letter I ever had from him.
And I wrote it. Yes, I wrote it. Well, I was the girl that he was engaged to. Did you forget that?
No. I'm not making excuses. I knew you were engaged.
And still you went.
And still I went.
Well, I found out, and I hated you. Hated you. Can you even understand that? I knew that you were in love with Delphin, and I was afraid of you, of your quiet ways, your sweetness, Well, I just wanted you out of the way, that's all, only for a few weeks until I could be sure of him. And so in my fury, I wrote that letter. I don't even know why I'm telling you this after all this time.
Well, perhaps it's because you've always gone on hating me.
Perhaps. I just wanted it out of my mind. Well, I'm actually glad that you destroyed the letter. I never meant for you to die. You must think me a terrible person.
I don't know. But it was the only letter I ever had from him, and now you say he didn't write it?
see you still care for him.
I care for that memory.
You tried your best to get him away from me, didn't you? You tried your best, you failed, and I kept him, and that's all there is.
Yes, that is all.
Now I wish I hadn't even told you. I had no idea you still had feelings for him. I actually thought that you would be amused. It all happened so long ago. And I had no reason to think that you had even taken that letter seriously. I mean, how could I? Particularly when you ran off and married Horace Ainsley just 2 months later. Just as soon as your mother could get you out of bed, she hauled you off to Florence and married you. Well, I must say that people were rather surprised at that. They all wondered at it being done so quickly. But I thought that I knew. Oh, yes, I thought that you had done it at a pique, just so that you could say you got married before Delphin and me. Well, kids, they have such silly reasons for doing the most serious things, and believe me, you marrying so quickly certainly convinced me that you never really cared.
Yes, I suppose it would.
And I suppose I did it as sort of a joke.
A joke?
Well, yes. You know, girls could be rather ferocious sometimes. Girls in love, especially. Thinking to myself all that evening that you were out there in the dark, waiting, dodging out of sight, fumbling for every sound, trying to get in. Well, of course, I was upset when I heard that you were ill afterwards.
But I didn't wait. No, he had arranged everything. Delphin was there waiting for me. We were let in at once.
Delphin was there? They let you in? Oh, come on now, you're lying.
Of course he came. Naturally he came.
Came? Oh, come on. How did he even know to find you there? You're raving.
But I answered the letter. Yes, I told him I would be there, and so he came to meet me.
Oh, my God. You answered the letter. I never thought that you would answer it.
Well, strange you never thought of that.
Well, I was blind with rage.
You know, it's getting cold out. I think we better go. And you know, Alita, I do feel sorry for you.
I think you're right. I think we ought to go. But I don't know why you should feel sorry for me.
Well, because I didn't have to wait that night.
Yes, I suppose I was beaten there. And after all these years, I really ought not begrudge you of it either. After all, in the end, I had everything. That's right. I had Delphin for 25 years, and you had nothing. Nothing! Only one letter he never even wrote.
I had Barbara.